Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. United Way of the Chattahoochee Valley celebrates Black History Month, recognizing the contributions made by African Americans in our country and community. Today, we will speak with 5 influential African Americans in the Chattahoochee Valley. Our goal today is to educate our community about the contributions and influence African Americans have made in the journey towards all people having basic human and American rights and the ability to fulfill their potential. I am so happy to be moderating this panel, and it is an honor for me to do so. Today, we are in for a real treat, and I am anxious to get started. With us, we have 5 outstanding community leaders and all United Way supporters who will share insight into their experience of being Black in America and their wishes for the future. So let's get started. To begin, we would like to go around and ask everyone to please share your name, position, and place of employment, and then we will get to the first question. Gwen?
Good morning, Ben. My name is Gwen Ruff, and I serve as the Senior Vice President of Administration and Community Outreach with Columbus Waterworks.
Arlene?
Good morning, Ben. Good morning, everyone. My name is Arlene Charles, and I am the Executive Director for Girls Inc. of Columbus and Phoenix Russell.
Dionne?
Good morning, and thank you, Ben, for the invitation. I am Dionne Rosser-Mims, Campus Vice Chancellor for Troy University on the Chattahoochee. Glad to be here.
Great, thank you. And Isaiah?
Good morning, Ben, and to all of those viewing or listening, participating in this program this morning. I am Isaiah Hugley. I am City Manager of Columbus, Georgia, for the Columbus Consolidated Government, and I am happy to be here with you this morning. Thank you to you and United Way for putting on this program.
And finally, Tavari.
Thanks, Ben. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tavari Turner. I am the Director of Grants and Special Initiatives here at Boys and Girls Clubs of the Chattahoochee Valley.
That's great. Well, we are so pleased to have you all here. Thank you all for joining us today. I have a question designated for everyone, but if you would like to jump in and piggyback off of an answer to the previous question, please do so. We would love for this to be conversational and to get to all the issues that we care about today. Our first question is for Gwen Ruff. Gwen, you are serving as the first Black female United Way campaign chair, and you will be United Way's first Black female board chair. Why did you say yes to the roles, and what is the significance of these firsts?
Well, Ben, first of all, thank you so much. As my fellow panelists have said, it is definitely an honor and a privilege to be with you today and to share our story and to join so many other influential African Americans in the community, making a difference every day. Initially, when I was asked to serve as the United Way campaign chair, I did not lean forward into the space of being the first Black woman to lead this charge or to be the board chair. I was motivated by my passion and my love for United Way. I have to admit it was a little bit overwhelming and daunting when I thought about all of those heavy hitters who have gone before, and I really didn't see myself in that same space, in that same place. But because of my love for United Way and a little bit of encouragement from you and Becky Fletcher, of course, knowing that you guys had my back, it was an easy yes. And it was not until after I said yes, I prayed about it, of course, and got the green light through my chain of command because it is a time commitment that it really dawned on me that I was sort of blazing a trail. And I think it's important because representation does matter. It matters for individuals in our community to see that African Americans, that women, that diversity, that United Way really is about not just diversity, but inclusion. And that you have created a space, you have created a place for diversity, and you support that initiative, that it truly is a movement, it's not a moment. And what it means for me as I transition into the board chair is really an opportunity to be a part of that and to help United Way get the message out, to reach out our arms, to be more inclusive with our partners, to educate, to ensure that the leadership, the staff, and the volunteers understand the importance and the message behind diversity, inclusion, and equity. So it really is a privilege for me to be a part of that and to learn and to grow and to continue the momentum that United Way has started several years ago and that has built up over the past couple of years. So I'm definitely honored to be a part of that and reaching out to brothers and sisters and anybody who wants to be a part of that as we wrap up the United Way campaign. And I'm going to do a shameless plug. If you haven't given yet, it's not too late. Go out to the website, click on Donate Now, and you can make a one-time donation, and we would love to have your support.
Thank you, Gwen. I mean, we love how you just keep on going with the campaign push. I mean, you know, I haven't been in a meeting with you in a long time where you haven't made that pitch, and it's just been amazing. And we're having an amazing success with our campaign this year as well. So thank you for that answer and for all you have done. We'll now go to Isaiah. Isaiah, you rose from humble beginnings to your position as city manager. Do you mind sharing some of your background with our audience and some of the barriers you overcame in your journey?
Sure. I did come from a challenging beginning. I was born in Crawford, Alabama, which is about 13 and a half miles outside of Phoenix City. Born down a dirt road to a teenage mother who was pregnant at 16. I was born at 17, and I was the second child. And but we lived in a little 3-room house with no indoor facilities. She was uneducated, 6th grade education, was a domestic worker. And at an early age, she was tired of her situation with a father who was her same age and was abusive, and she decided she was going to leave that marriage and move to Phoenix City, Alabama to public housing. We moved to Fred Douglass to public housing in Phoenix City because she was a domestic worker earning $5 a day, $25 a week. We had to go on welfare, and we lived in Fred Douglass in Phoenix City, eventually moved to Farley Homes in Columbus, still on welfare. And we moved from there to Baker Village to public housing in Columbus, still on welfare. And so then when I graduated high school, I was still going to the store with food stamps. And it was a difficult life. At that time, I did not know a person in my entire family on my mother's side or my father's side who had even graduated high school. And so no uncles and aunts and cousins, no one had ever graduated high school. And my sister, who is 2 years older than I am, remember my mother was pregnant with me at 16. My sister is 2 years older. So she was 14, and she got pregnant her senior year. Going into her senior year, went to summer school, and she graduated summer school. So she was the first to graduate high school. And so I graduated high school, and there was this guy where I worked, and he would come into the dry cleaners on Buena Vista Road and would see me cleaning the laundromat, and he kept pressuring me to go to college. Well, my idea of success was going into the military, and he kept worrying me, and I decided I'm going to just apply to the school that he went to, this small school in Alabama, Talladega College, and because he had worked in the financial aid office. I applied just to get him off my back, and they accepted me by waiving the application fee and gave me a full financial aid packet. And so it was a situation where it was Army or go to school and make my mother proud and be this first generation college student. I went off to college, completed Talladega in 4 years, went off to graduate school at Mississippi State. But the point that I want to make is that once I went off to college, I made sure that there were 3 siblings coming along, 2 coming along behind me, I made sure that they would also go to college. They would finish high school and go to college. It's not whether they was going, it was where are you going to college? And so I was able to lift as I climbed. And so it was a difficult life, a long journey to get to where I am.
Well, that is an amazing, inspiring story, Isaiah. How does your coming from that background inform your daily work as city manager, that lived experience that you bring? I'm sure it creates a great amount of empathy and compassion, but I'd like to hear,
Well, absolutely. What I do as city manager, it's about taking care of my community, providing for a quality of life of those in Columbus, Georgia. And I can tell you there have often over the years been those who have been left out. You didn't get an equal level of service. And so as I became city manager, I wanted to make sure that I take care of the citizens of Columbus, Georgia, not those that live on one side of town, or at a certain economic status, but all of the people of Columbus, Georgia. And so I work every day trying to make sure that there is a level playing field, as level as you can get it when it comes to quality of life for all of the citizens, the people of Columbus, Georgia.
Isaiah, I love the fact that you had someone in your life that showed you something you couldn't see, that you could go to college, that it was possible for you. And I think about all the girls at Girls Inc. and what we're trying to do, having them expand their worldview beyond what is known.
Yes.
And I love what you said, that you wanted to lift as you climbed. I mean, that's just a powerful statement, and something that I think all can learn from, and that our youth coming up today can certainly benefit from those lessons. Thank you, Isaiah.
Sure.
All right, we'll now go to our next question. This question is for Arlene. You are the African American CEO. I'm getting some feedback. Wait a second. All right. You are the first African American CEO at Girls Inc. You are leading an organization that is attended mostly by African American girls. What values are you seeking to instill in the girls that you serve?
Thank you, Ben. And I thought a lot about the question. And for me, it really is about courage, right? As an organization, we hope to bring together the people, a pro-girl environment, and programming to help inspire girls to be strong, smart, and bold. But as I think about our girls of color, I want them to have the courage, right, to be strong, to know their value, to understand their gifts, to care for themselves and others, and to make good choices. I want them to have the courage to be smart. We want to instill that spirit of learning and continuous pursuit of knowledge. I want them to be prepared for the future and the opportunities that come to them. I want them to have the courage to be bold, right? The courage to explore beyond what is known to them, as Isaiah talked about a few moments ago. That they can see or create their own narrative, not the narrative that society or others create for them. And above all else, I want them to have the courage to see what they can be, right? To know that beyond what they explore or see in their community, there are roles, there are careers, there are things that they can do, and they can explore those passions, they can explore their purpose, and the world is available to them.
Hold on, Ben. You're on mute, Ben.
Okay, I'm off now. Thank you. Last year, we saw social unrest, protesting, and a call to denounce white supremacy. Next generation of activists took to the streets across the country to march for lives, equality, and equity. As a young Black man in 2021, how do you move past what transpired in 2020, or do you?
Thank you for that question. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this question as well. I was asking some friends. I'm like, do we move forward? How do we move forward? And I think the answer is yes and no. I think that there is a unique opportunity for young folks my age to really use the platform that we've been given now with social media and even getting in the streets. I think there's a unique opportunity to call to action or call, I guess to, continue to promote the conversation. I think that a lot of times we talk about this a lot here in my work, it's like we have all of these different things we want to do. And so it's very easy to kind of kick things down, like kick the can down the road. And so having a conversation and continuing to allow that conversation to be prominent is key. And so I think that we have a unique opportunity, people my age, to continue that conversation. So I don't think we necessarily have to stay in the streets, but we also can do things in different ways. I have some friends who, during the protest this summer, they decided that, not necessarily protesting was the way they wanted to go, but they wanted to provide snacks to protesters. And then that even comes back here to our community, doing the work that I'm proud to do every day as a youth development organization here at Boys and Girls Clubs. We have work that we can be doing here in our local community to help young people to continue to have powerful conversations at young ages about how they can impact change. And so I think that, yes, we do move forward in through some of the initiatives that we're implementing in our community, but we also stay stagnated and have the conversation to continue to push agendas that help make this world and this community a little bit more equitable. So it's a yes and no.
Hey, Ben, if I could just add to
Gwen.
what Tavari was saying, because that is so powerful. I love the yes and no. And I'm in a different generation. And so I really have struggled with some of the things that I have seen in terms of injustices and what's going on and what is the appropriate way to respond. And I found myself getting angry. But then I said, it's okay to have this righteous anger. And this righteous anger is directed at these injustices and inequities that I see and that we experience and that have not gone away. And so to your point, Tavari, I think is how do we address that? And how are we effective in addressing that? And part of that is having conversations and talking and listening to each other. And some of that is pushing forward, really making a difference, as the great John Lewis said, having that good trouble. So I salute you and your peers for really being engaged and involved in this time and place to really make a difference. So thank you for what you do.
Hey, Ben, if I can chime in as well, Tavari, I certainly appreciate your referencing conversations and the importance of having conversations. And when you spoke to that as well. In my world, in higher education, and then also as a mother who's raising a 14-year-old, my daughter would get angry with me if I said she was younger. But what I see in my daughter's generation and really the kids who are going to college now, I think it's very important that they be given the tools to have effective conversations, regardless of what position you hold. And I tell my daughter and her peers, I want you to be a critical consumer of information. I don't want you to get your source of your position or to back up your position just from one source, meaning your parents. So if you hear your mom and dad say, we like X, I don't want you to go to school and say, I like X, I like XX because my parents said this. I want you to be knowledgeable and then also be open-minded. Arlene, you spoke to worldview. That's important. Exposing our kids to the vast array of perspectives that are out there, and be okay with the notion that we can agree to disagree, but we need to be respectful in how we interact and communicate.
Yeah, and I would just say that I appreciate Tavari's response to the yes and no, and I guess Gwen, maybe because we're in the same generation, but excellent response by Tavari, and I would just say to those listening, just to remind the people listening and those who are not listening of what the old folk used to say. I cannot hear what you say for what you do is thundering in my ear. And our young people, generation, Gwen and our generation, we see what you do, we hear what you say, and what you do is thundering in my ear. And so take that for whatever it's worth to those who are listening, who are saying one thing and doing something else or supporting what is transpiring. I cannot hear what you say, for what you do is thundering in my ear.
That is profound. As a mother of three young men, my youngest graduating from college this semester, my oldest graduate from Mississippi State, Isaiah, and my middle son working graduate from Rowan University. Tavari, I think about this movement, not a moment, right? Because as, you know, mothers of sons or mothers of young people, that stress, we felt it. We felt it when George Floyd called for his mother. And so how do we continue to communicate the value, right, of our children, the value and the things that they have to offer to the community beyond race, right? So, you know, we want the same things. We are more similar than we are different. We want to be heard. We want the country to acknowledge that racism exists, right? And so, you know, I look forward to all that our young people are going to continue to do to continue this dialogue, because it's important that we not stop talking about it. It's so important.
Yeah, so true. Eternal vigilance is the price of freedom. And we've been reminded of that far too many times over the last few months. But it rings true. And we just need to keep it up and keep up the fight, and keep reminding everyone that we're all moving forward as a society. So our next question is for Dionne. Dionne, our education system has opportunities for more equitable distribution of resources to ensure all children have access to a quality education. What policy or system changes do you champion or are you passionate about?
Ben, thank you for that question. And, you know, as I thought about how best to respond to the question, I felt that it was important to formulate my response from the context of this COVID environment and the pandemic in which we are all facing. And I want to first acknowledge the leadership of all of the school systems, district leaders and such. They're working very, very hard to keep our kids safe, the teachers safe, and to find, you know, solutions that are supportive of all groups of students who are, or learners who are in that they are expected to serve. But make no mistake about it, the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting, yes, everyone, but it's not affecting everyone equally. I want to share some stats with you. So according to the Alliance for Resource Equity, the Latino Americans are twice as likely to have lost a job as white Americans. 36% of lower income families say lack of technology is likely to prevent their students from completing schoolwork, compared to just 4% of upper income families. And the coronavirus is killing Black Americans at a three times a rate at that of white Americans. And so when you consider those stats in the context of you know, the educational environment, it's pretty stark. So initial estimates suggest that students could lose roughly 30% of normal learning gains in reading, more than 50% of the normal learning gains in math, The challenge is exacerbated for students whose families lack the time, resources, and flexibility to support distance learning. And then when you have students of color from low-income families, that they are much more likely to lack basics for distance learning and such, and they're facing stress. And again, many families are experiencing this, but stress, anxiety, loss of job, food insecurity, and all the like. And so the question, so what in terms of equity and equitable distribution of resources? For me, the bottom line is if we see that there is a lack and there is a need, and there are segments of our society because of their race, because of their income level, that they are lacking resources and therefore not getting the proper educational support that they need, we need to redirect funding to support those portions of our population. And I think it's important, if we think it's important to support everybody, but in particular individuals who are economically and socially challenged, we need to redirect resources accordingly. I want to share a couple of strategies that I found useful and I think are being utilized by school districts across the United States. But in particular, what I think it's important, you mentioned, Ben, what am I passionate about, and that is access, ensuring that we recognize where the inequities exist, and we name it, we call it, and we come together and figure out ways to resource and support the communities that need it. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach to redirecting resources, and I think school systems and leadership, they know that. And so, and we need to be willing as leaders and at the federal and down to the state level to recognize that we need to provide and identify strategies that would allow school districts to redirect resources where needed and to remove barriers. And so that might call for changes in policy, et cetera. Mental health resources are critical now. I know that it hasn't yet to come up, but that's a major area of concern for me, particularly in education. And there's historically, there's been a lack of access and resources for mental health services in underserved populations. And then finally, in education, in terms of equity and resource distribution, if you will, I think at the end of the day, we need to, if we value every student and we believe that every student can achieve, then it's incumbent upon us as leaders to find the resources to ensure their success.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dionne. All right, we have another question that I'll pose to the group, and anyone can jump in and take this one. Since we are in Black History Month, this is an appropriate question. There are times when it seems as if our history books shy away from slavery, Jim Crow, segregation, and the plight of African Americans dating back 402 years here on the North American continent. What can we do as a society to tell America's complete story, the good, the bad, and the ugly?
Can I offer just a really short quote? And I don't know who to attribute this to, and I think my panelists will understand this. If we don't know our history, we are doomed to repeat it. And we're seeing that it play out, in my opinion, in today's environment. I think there are a lot of folks walking around who don't know history, and they don't know how to, again, circling back, to have an intelligible conversation so that we can meet common ground.
And yes, Ben, I would say to that, that Black history started out with a week, and then Black History celebration was extended to a month. And I believe that because you can't get that in school and in certain environments, that we have a responsibility to tell our history, whether it's in the African American church, whether it's in places like Girls Inc., Boys and Girls Club. I think we've got to take the opportunity to tell the story. And because if we don't tell the story, who else is going to tell it? You know, I always try and tell the story when I go out and talk to groups. I think they need to know that, you know, where we started in 1619 in Jamestown, Virginia, they need to know the story and how we got through slavery and through civil rights and how we got to where we are today as African Americans. It was blood, it was death. Our people went through so much, but because they fought for our rights and for what we have today, I told them we now have the right to travel anywhere, we can live anywhere, we can study anywhere, and we can vote everywhere. And I think it showed up when Barack Obama became president, the fact that if we vote, we can make a difference. I think it showed up just recently in Georgia and across the nation that, you know, if we vote, we can make a difference. And so, you know, it's no longer about whether we can check into a hotel like Indigo. It's about whether we can afford to check out. But we need to tell the story. I mean, when you look at 50 years ago compared to today, we've heard about education today, but Black Americans are completing high school. More Black Americans are completing high school today, obviously, than were 50 years ago. Only 15% of African American adults today lack a high school education, compared to 75% 50 years ago. More of us attend college, and today more of us have degrees today. We're homeowners, but we need to share the gains, where we came from and how we got to where we are, and the gains tell the story of that we've come a long way, but it just didn't happen. It took blood, sweat, tears, even death to get us to where we are today. I would not be where I am. None of us would be where we are were it not for those who came before us and challenged others to treat us the way we ought to be treated. So we got to tell our.
Well, I think that is so important. I think what's really, really important is truth, for us to really talk about how racism is institutionalized, is systematic. There are structures that have prevented African Americans from aspiring to certain roles and positions. I am definitely honored to be the first African American executive director for Girls Inc., but I'm only 52 years old and I've been the first many times. That's something to be said for that. We are capable, we are educated. This is why this conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion is so important. We don't want to be excluded just because, you know, this is our race. You know, we can't take it off every day. And so, you know, we strive again to have the same things, to have homes. You know, we want our children to be safe. That should not be something that is not a natural thing for us. And so, you know, it's important that we not just have that conversation within our community. Everyone needs to face that truth that racism exists and is systematic.
And Arlene, I absolutely agree with you. And I think the big challenge is having those tough conversations. And a lot of times in the corporate environment, the mindset is if we're silent about it and we don't talk about it, then everything is okay. Let's not pretend George Floyd was murdered, with a knee to the neck. Let's not pretend, that these unarmed young Black men are killed and that there's a pattern that inhibits talented, qualified, passionate, bold, beautiful, smart people of color from being included in the conversation. And so a lot of organizations believe in diversity. We'll make sure we have diversity around the table, but they stop short of the equity and inclusion, that everyone has a voice, that everyone matters. And so, yes, Isaiah, we've come a long way, because in our lifetime, Blacks did not have the right to vote. So I'm calling you out on that age thing too, okay? Um, However, the truth of the matter is we still have a long way to go. I have 2 adult sons. And at this season in my life, my heart should not drop when my son gets behind the wheel of a car and heads back to Atlanta. And I have to pray over him that he doesn't get stopped by a police officer who won't see him as an amazing, smart dad, intelligent, a database administrator and all these wonderful things, but see him as a Black man. And so as long as I have that concern in my heart and in my mind, that tells me we've not gotten there yet.
Well, and when you did your opening, Gwen, and Ben, and talked about what you're doing for United Way, and I want to thank United Way for being a model agency. And Ben has come in and he has talked the talk, but he's walked the walk. And when you talked about diversity and inclusion in your opening, I thought about the old saying, because you're going to be cheering the board. I thought the old saying that diversity is inviting you to the dance, but inclusion is asking you to dance. And when you become cheer, that's what I consider asking you to dance. And that's real inclusion. And so kudos to United Way and to each of you, but don't just ask me to come just to let me light up the room. And you could say, oh, we've got African Americans here. Let me cheer something. Let me sit at the head of the table. And that's what you've done. That's what United Way and its board extended to you. And so that's the difference in just diversity versus inclusion.
Thank you, Isaiah. We have a long way to go still, but we are making intentional steps every day, and just greatly appreciate the support from all of you. We're getting some questions up now, so I'll throw this one to the group from our wonderful board member, Erica Walker. United Way of the Chattahoochee Valley, what are your thoughts on how this nation can work to close the racial and ethnic wealth gap? In what ways are we hindering ourselves in this area? Interesting question. Who would like to take it?
Somebody. Okay, I'm going to jump in really quick, just very quick. I think it's twofold. I guess all my answers are twofold today, but it's twofold. I think that, again, it's about pumping resources into the community in order to help continue to close that gap. But it's also about conversation and education. One thing that we do here at Boys and Girls Clubs is we have curriculum that we push at our clubs that really starts kids at a young age around talking about the importance of financial literacy. And so I think that that education from an early age, a constant conversation around the importance of financial literacy and good money management skills, along with resources being pumped in to help build that wealth, are two of the things that can be done to kind of help close that wealth gap.
And I'll piggyback on what you said. I think education is key. And again, I'll speak to higher education. I think folks need to be equipped with the knowledge of what the various pathways are for them to obtain or further their education. So a college degree is one pathway, short-term certificate programs are another pathway. And so education is key. Graduating from high school and then moving on to some form of post-secondary education is certainly key to bridging that gap.
And I concur that education is certainly key. Education is why I am where I am today. What has made the difference in my life. And you heard me in my opening, or when Ben asked the question about being city manager and talked about a good quality of life for all, or at least level the playing field as much as we can. I guess one of the challenges, when it comes to my community, the Black community, and it's nothing new, but there has to be a strategy for us in the Black community. I think we have, two societies in the Black community. One aspiring and achieving, living well, making lots of money, and the other desperately poor and increasingly without hope. I mean, poverty is just a concern as a whole in Columbus, more than 20%, but when it comes to African Americans, it exceeds 27%. And but as African Americans, when I think about education, we need a strategy to lift as we climb. We can see the lift as we climb strategy with other races of people. And I can tell you that I wanted this strategy for my family. And that's why I mentioned earlier about every sibling behind me would have to go to college, would have to finish high school and go to college. After I went to college and was able to see how education could make a difference on the playing field, I set out to ensure that all of my siblings would follow, and they would make sure that their kids would follow. So my strategy was to be the champion for my family and make sure that all future generations of Hugleys are educated Hugleys, because I truly believe that education makes a difference. And so I submit to you and those listening that, as African Americans, we need a lift as we climb strategy, and every family needs a champion for that family. Education made the difference for me. It made the difference for my siblings. But you may know my sister, Pat Hugley Green, is chair of the school board for Muskogee County. She is the state chair of the Georgia Association of Educators. And so it was my strategy that pushed her to go to finish high school, go to college. And I look at how that strategy is working within my own family. So it's a lift as we climb strategy. And I think, if we do that, we can start moving in the direction of closing a wealth gap, because we're bringing our siblings and we're changing lives in families for generations to come. Education.
I love that. I would piggyback and say it's both education and skills, right? So, having the skills, having the community prepared for the digital economy. We think about what happened with the pandemic. What happened? We had to go virtual. How many people were left out of that ability to go virtual because they don't have internet at home? We take certain things for granted, right? We think that, I think one of the things that we have to do as a community is stop thinking about poverty as a crime. It's not a crime to be poor. Throughout history, there have been families that have been, have suffered poverty and been poor, but were proud. They had a plan. So, I think what we have to do is embrace our community and understand that sometimes people just don't know. Let's stop judging each other. Let's help each other. Let's figure out how to move the community, get people better jobs, better paying jobs. skills, computer skills, digital literacy. Let's, inform, let's educate about investments. One of the things that I'm so proud that we did this year with Girls Inc. was we had Aflac Asset Management teach our girls about publicly traded stocks. These are things that we didn't learn growing up. And so in order to close that wealth gap, we have to be, like we are all said, be educated in these areas and be skilled, right? To move the needle and move forward.
Ben, you're
And
muted.
you're muted, yes.
What a great program to have at Girls Inc. teaching your girls financial literacy at that young age. That's so important. So we are nearing the end of our time here, but I'd just like to ask the group, and anyone can respond to this. Besides all the great things that you've offered today as potential action steps, is there anything else that our community should be doing specifically to advance equity, specifically racial equity in our community? A specific action step that you would like to see us collectively take?
Hey, Ben, that's a great question. And we don't have enough time for me to go down my whole list because I've been thinking about this for a while. So I'll just get some top nuggets. I think the important thing, and it goes back to what Tavari said, is having those difficult conversations. I think organizations need to do a self-awareness and a litmus test. The leadership needs to look around the table and see who's around the table, and needs to kind of take a look at those unconscious biases that he or she may have that serves to exclude people or make people feel that they are part of the organization. What policies do you have in place? What conversations are you having? And recognizing the power of your words, because your words can either serve to build the bridges or serve to create barriers. And a lot of times individuals in leadership positions will release words in the atmosphere that end up discouraging, demeaning, or depressing individuals within the organization. And then that keeps people from being involved in community entities. And I think a lot of what we're seeing now, the progress that we're seeing now, is coming from communities and those leaning forward organizations who recognize that we are at a place in time that we need to start talking to each other. We need to start connecting. And as Isaiah said, lift as you climb, but it has to be very intentional. When I'm in a space, I have to be intentional with saying, who else in my circle am I going to reach out to and invite them to occupy the space with me? How am I going to share this information? How am I going to help somebody else? It doesn't happen by happenstance. It has to be intentional, it has to be thoughtful, and it has to be the responsibility of each one of us to really move forward in that inclusion and that education and that knowledge train.
Gwen, if I could piggyback on what you've shared, I think it's important for us to direct a significant degree of our energies to our youth. They need to be equipped with the skills and the ability to have difficult conversations around race, around issues that they are facing within their generation, inequities, being mistreated, and not feeling as if they have a space to share in a safe way what they view and how they feel. And so I strongly believe that we as educators and really as leaders within across all communities, we need to provide the training and the support. And then I also think we need to address and provide those same skills to our college students who are going through college right now. They are the future leaders. They are leaders now. And so if they are not equipped to have these conversations in an intelligible way, and again, if you're around me, you'll hear me say critical consumers of information, to be able to have conversations, these difficult conversations, and in such a way where you can move forward to bridge communities, bridge places where there are divides, and we can still make progress.
Yeah, I'd also just like to add, I think we need to continue the first. So, we have first on this call. A lot of us on the call are first back in Washington with the election of Kamala Harris. That's an amazing first. But even my CEO, Rodney, he is the first African-American CEO for Boys and Girls Clubs of the Chattahoochee Valley. And just really, to your point, Ms. Gwen, like continuing to bring down and kind of make space for others. And so, a quick shameless plug for us. Hopefully you've heard by now our Youth of the Year event is on Thursday this week. And so we're going to be highlighting our amazing young people this week. And hopefully everyone will tune in. But we are also going to be inducting into the Hall of Fame our first African-American inductee, who is one of our club alumni and the first African-American to attend the clubs. And so it's just amazing to see a lot of the firsts continue to happen. And I think that creates synergy and helps everyone to continue these conversations. And so as many times as possible, let's continue to make those firsts happen if possible.
And I wish Gwen could restate her comments, because as she talked, and I was kind of like saying, yeah, she's right, and in my mind trying to summarize what you were saying, Gwen. And I guess the thought that came to mind for me in your remarks is all men and women are created equal. The time is always right to do what is right. Do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with thy God. And I would close out your closure by repeating, I can't hear what you say, for what you do is thundering in my ear. The time is always right to do what is right. And I hope that we will remember that. All of those listening, share it with our friends, and make sure that we treat others like we want to be treated, but do what's right, do justly, love mercy.
Fantastic. Ditto, Isaiah. Love that.
Well, I think that is a very fitting into this panel. I have greatly enjoyed this discussion and really appreciate you all taking your lunch hour to be with us today, and appreciate everybody tuning in. So on behalf of United Way, our staff, and our board of directors, thank you all, and thank you for all you do in the community, and happy Black History Month to all of you and your families. Thanks so much, and take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks.